Alright, so in today's video, I'm going to show you how to build a timeline that has linear navigation so that you can press buttons to go to the next part of the animation. And you can also press the previous button to go to a previous part of the animation. Now you may be saying, well, Carl, what am I going to want to press buttons to have different squares just animated in different ways? Well, you probably won't. But as you probably know by now, I like keeping things as simple as possible and isolated so they don't have to overwhelm you with a ton of code. However, there are plenty of times I use these techniques in the real world. So for instance, I have a demo like this where I'll, click off screen so that I can explain something that's happening. And then when the animation's done and I'm done talking, I'll just click again to get to the next section and the animation will play, and then I'll say, oh no, you see my password, and I'll click to get rid of it. So this whole concept of being able to navigate through a timeline is very important. But again, I just want to start off with something very simple so that the concept sets in, and then down the line, you can apply it to something more complex. Let's give it a go. Alright, so let's go through the basic setup here. I've got this div of boxes here. Each box has an easy class of B0, B1, B2, B3, so they're very easy to target. We're going for code readability here over being concise. And then we have a nav that has a previous button and a next button. Over in our JavaScript, what do we have? We have quite a bit written already for you. We have a select function, which is an alias to query selector. And we are setting up some references to our next and previous buttons. I'm constructing a timeline that starts in a paused state, and each tween has a default duration of 1, and a scale of 0 is a property being used in each tween. The trick here is that each box has its own unique entrance animation, and then they fade out. So let me just run this instead of talking about it. And I told you that this animation starts in a paused state, so hitting the next button is going to start the animation, and I have the durations purposely slow so you can actually see sort of what's happening. Each box comes in with its own unique entrance. So in the code, real quick, B0 is coming in from just a scale of 0 because that's the default, and then it's going to fade out to an opacity of 0. B1 here is doing a little rotation from -180. B2 is rotating and coming down from the y-axis, and B3 is just rotating and coming up from a y of 100. Now what we want to do is make it so that when I hit the next button, it only plays the entrance of the next item, and then we hit next again to leave that item and go to the next one, and previous will work the same way going backwards. I actually have my buttons coded already so that the next button is going to tell the timeline to play, and the previous button is going to tell the timeline to reverse. So technically I could hit previous right now, and look, the timeline's going to reverse going 3, 2, 1, 2, 0. But again, the point here is that I want to just have a pause after things get introduced. So, how would I add a pause to a timeline? That is the question. Well, guess what? There's an addPause method. So, once the B0 thing scales up from a scale of 0 here, I'm going to say .addPause. And what this will do is tell the playhead to basically pause right there after that first tween ends. So I'm going to just copy that, do a Command-C, and after every item is introduced and before it leaves, I'm going to put this little addPause here. And it's basically like putting a stop sign right in the middle of your animation. I don't know that I need one after the last tween because there's nowhere to go. So let's just run this as is and see what happens. So we're starting in a paused state. When I hit next, remember we're going to tell the timeline to play, but when it gets to that addPause, boom, it stops right where it should. When I hit next, it's going to go away, and then the next one comes in and then pauses. So here we've just put these little pauses in the middle of the timeline, and it works pretty cool. And what also works is if I hit previous, it's going to reverse, and again in reverse, stop at the previous addPause. So with just a little code, we now can navigate this timeline. Now that we see how it works, we can speed things up a little bit. Maybe I would do a duration of 0.3 for every tween. And now when I hit run, what's going to happen? Well, of course, it's just going to be a little bit faster, and there'll be a little bit more zip. All right, this timeline now has a little bit of spring in its step. Cool. So I know addPause, just reading it, it's incredibly intuitive, but I really hope it helps you see how it can be implemented. And I just want to make the point that it's these little things that seem so simple that we take for granted are the type of things that really make GSAP stand apart from the other animation libraries out there. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find something else that makes it this easy to implement linear navigation as part of a sequence. In the next lesson, we'll start building our dot navigation so that we don't have to do everything in a linear fashion. We can go from 1 to 3, back to 1, no problemo. Stick around, I think you'll like it. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. If you want more free videos like this, subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter. For access to all my premium courses and exclusive demos, join me in my Creative Coding Club. Details below.